It's been a while since I've done a rant. Hard to know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess maybe the plague years have simply made it so that I'm not dealing with many other people, and so I'm not dealing, therefore, with stupid people. Not to say that everyone is stupid. But there's something that happened recently, and I've been seeing it happening a lot, and it sort of feeds into the next rant that's going to come after this one. In order to understand what I'm talking about, we need to talk about a couple of principles before we can get to how those principles apply to real life. The first principle is an economic principle, and it's called an externality. And I'll just read right here off the Wikipedia page. In economics, an externality or external cost is an indirect cost or benefit to an uninvolved third party that arises as an effect of some other party's activity. For example, air pollution from motor vehicles. The cost of air pollution is borne by essentially everybody because we all breathe the same air. The cost of that pollution is essentially a write-off for the company that creates it, shifting the cost of doing something onto someone else. So that's what an economic externality is. It's a form of cost shifting where someone takes a cost that they should rightfully bear and manages to push it off onto someone else and force someone else to bear the cost. Let me give you a great example of how this happened to me recently. I wanted to give my little brother and his recently wedded wife a large amount of money for a wedding present. And I called up my bank and said, hey, I want to use PayPal to give my little brother, him and his new wife, a bunch of money as a wedding present. Is this going to be okay? And they said, oh yeah, your threshold is X, and that amount you want to give, although it's several $1,000s, is quite a bit less than that. Go ahead and do it, no problem. So I said, well, okay, I suspect that's not true, but I'll go ahead and do it. So I went ahead and did it, and sure enough, 2 days later, a text message shows up on my phone saying, oh, we declined your transaction because it was fraudulent. This is the same bank that I had called up and said, hey, you dumb jackasses, I'm going to give somebody a big present, several $1,000s in cash. Is that okay? And I got told, oh yeah, sure, no problem. So then I had to call them back up, make another appointment to go in and see a banker. Then the banker had to call the people who had invalidated the transaction and ask them, what the fuck? And the person on the other end was basically stupid and clueless, shocking, and just said, well, that's a lot of money and we were worried about it. And they didn't even know that I had called up in advance and said, is this okay? And I was told, yeah, that's okay. Suffice it to say, though, their right hand did not know what their left hand was doing, and the cost of validating that transaction, which is something that the bank is supposed to do, the bank is supposed to say, yes, the transaction is valid or not. They decided, oh, well, we're not going to actually do our job and validate that transaction. We're just going to send a text message to our customer and force them to go through all the bullshit and hassle and getting an appointment and driving half an hour to the nearest branch and blah, 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 blah. That was an externality. They are throwing the cost of authenticating the transaction back on me when it's their problem and their job to validate those transactions. And yet here they are not doing their job, throwing the cost of validating transactions back on me. Now we've got, I think, an understanding of what externalities are. When someone who should be doing their job throws the cost of doing their job onto, a more or less innocent second party or third party. Now we need to talk about Zukens Law of Software. If you don't know who Jamie Zukens is, don't worry about it. The important thing is that he coined something called Zukens Law. Zukens Law states, every program attempts to expand until it can read email. The programs which cannot so expand are replaced by ones which can. And people have said, well, this is really talking about software bloat. But Zukens said, no, my point wasn't really about copycats. It was about platformization. Any app that you live in all day has a pressure to become everything and do everything. An app for editing text becomes an IDE, and then it becomes an OS. An app for displaying hypertext documents becomes a mail reader, and then it becomes an OS. Zukens is talking about Lucid Emacs, which he worked on a lot. And he's talking about Netscape Navigator, later on Mozilla Firefox, that he also was the principal author of, or at least he was for several platforms like the SGI and the Mac. this principle that every program feels this pressure to expand and that this is something that happens to all software, it turns out that this actually applies to websites too. And that actually gets us to sort of the substance of this rant, and I'm sorry it's taken a while. Let's go to a piece of mod mail that I got. So we got this mod mail. This guy, Avocado20, probably an admin at Reddit, I'm guessing, works for Reddit, gets paid by Reddit for his work, says, hey guys, you guys have this Reddit talk feature on your subreddit now. And you can use this to host live talks and hang out with your community and do AMAs and talk with other Redditors live and blah, 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 blah. So this is a new feature of Reddit. Those of you who are really fast are probably already thinking, what does this have to do with platformization or externalities? Let's go down a little bit. So someone else, one of our other moderators, asks this guy, how is this new feature going to harm our community in ways that we don't expect? You can see that this guy already understands that there is a hidden problem here and that the people who are sort of gung-ho about how great this new Reddit talk feature is going to be probably don't fully understand how it's going to affect the community and the moderators in this case. And of course the guy says, oh yeah, the use of this feature won't harm your community, this is supposed to strengthen your community, blah, 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 blah. Here's my reply to him. He says that this feature was created to strengthen your community and allow your community to connect. And I quoted right off the Wikipedia page and Zukens Law of Software that this is platformization of Reddit. Apps that you live in all day, like Reddit, have a pressure to become everything and do everything. Reddit has been doing this for quite a while now, probably the last 6 months. You can live stream on Reddit now. They tried to enable a chat feature that was kind of like IRC to try and be IRC. It's platformization of Reddit, right? They're expanding what Reddit does to try and keep people looking at Reddit longer, in hopes that the people looking at Reddit will view more ads. Because that's the real driving force behind all of this, is eyeballs looking at ads. That's how Reddit makes money. And that's fine. Reddit is a business. Businesses are created in order to make money. I don't really have a problem with that. Here's where the real problem begins and where we have to start talking about externalities. The problem begins when you use unpaid volunteer moderators to police your communities. And the problem then kicks into high gear when your moderators, which are unpaid volunteers, are already way too goddamn busy. And then you start adding these new platformization features. And who bears the cost of that platformization? You create the feature once and you deploy it. You've borne some cost there, but realistically, who is going to get stuck forever policing that new Reddit talk? It's your volunteer moderators. You are throwing more work upon your moderators when they are already way too busy and way overstressed. This is a form of economic externality. You are transferring the costs of preventing Reddit from degenerating into a playground for spammers, clansmen, and bullies right onto your unpaid moderators. And why not? It doesn't cost you anything to do that. And using economic externalities to fatten profit margins is a favorite tactic of businesses everywhere since the beginning of time. And you can bet that Spez, the CEO of Reddit, and the rest of the Reddit executive board understand this point very well indeed. After all, they are businessmen and they understand business. Hey, as long as their stock options keep going up, they're happy to throw their volunteer moderators under the profit bus because all they care about is money. And so, the guy left off with this quote about, would you like some support from our team to help your first Reddit talk? Let's cut through the corporate speak. When are you going to start using this new feature? And my reply to him is simply, I would like you to stop taking away even more of my time than you've already taken away. And no, by the way, I am not stupid enough to believe that anybody in Reddit's C-suite is going to listen to me or anyone else about this economic externality, about this cost shifting, about this movement towards platformization because for them, it's all about money. They're throwing more work on moderators who they will never pay. Executives of Reddit will never bear the cost of these new features they create because they throw the cost of supporting those features onto their unpaid moderators in the name of platformization, upping their own profits and making their own stock options worth more. And they don't care. Seriously, the executive suite of Reddit, they don't give a fuck how much they fuck over their moderators. We are like tissue paper to them. We are here to be used up and thrown away and absolutely never to have our opinions listened to, or for us to tell them, like, this dumb move towards platformization is really, really bad for your moderation staff. Don't do this. You're just fucking over your moderators, and your moderators are already overworked, and a lot of them, frankly, were never very good at this game in the first place. But moderators being bad at what they do is the next rant. It's not this one. This one is about platformization, economic externalities, and Zukens Law.